Welcome to Sisters in Arms. My name is Kerrie and Eau Claire.
And I'm Renee Gagne. And together we're serving as the Second Amendment resources for the communities in Massachusetts.
Awesome. Today is our second episode, and we have a very awesome, amazing guest today. It's Jon Green from Goal. He's one of our biggest supporters.
Yes, I am.
He's an avid hunter, a family man. He is our training counselor, so he made us who we are today, which is NRA instructors. He's the director of education for Goal, which is Gun Owners Action League, and he's our mentor. So thank you so much for being here today with us.
Listen, I have to tell you, I'm so proud of the advocates and the trainers that you two have become. Keep doing what you're doing because you're making my job easy. You really are. Very proud of both of you.
Oh,
thank you so much. You just drove in from a nice hunting trip down south, I heard.
Yes, I did.
Tell us about it.
I've been going down to South Carolina with friends for years and had a wonderful time. Was successful. We harvested a couple of nice animals, bring it home and share it with friends and family, and we always meet wonderful and interesting people down there.
That's awesome.
So thank you for asking.
Awesome, thank you.
So you said you smoked everything, right?
If we harvest a wild boar, I typically will put that on the smoker, and pulled pork, things like that.
I think we know where we're going for supper tonight.
All the neighbors come over.
I bet.
Come over when they smell the smoke coming out of the backyard.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then I had a venison sausage made. Everybody loves the venison sausage.
Yeah.
It's just beautiful. The turkeys, the deer, the people, the countryside, no light pollution. You look up in the sky and it's beautiful.
You can
just
see all the
absolutely
stars.
love it.
That's awesome.
Absolutely love it.
One with nature.
We'll take you there one of these days.
Yes, that would be great. We can do an episode.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Live
On
from the
location.
stand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, he can come
location.
here and we can do a cooking show.
Here we go.
Yeah.
The possibilities are
beast.
endless.
With the beast.
That's right. That's right.
All right, so we have some questions for you.
Excellent.
All
I
right.
hope to have some answers.
So can you explain who Goal is and what makes up the board for Goal?
Sure, absolutely. So Gun Owners Action League has been around since about 1974, and it's made up of law-abiding firearms owners in Massachusetts. We have approximately 18,000 members now, about 125 affiliated clubs, and our mission, if you will, is to advocate on behalf of responsible gun owners. We train, as you know, I mean, two of my outstanding candidates right in front of me. We train people that wish to be safe and responsible gun owners. We train the legislature on the effects, both positive and negative, of the bills that they pass and become law. We advocate on behalf of the responsible gun owner, and certainly we lobby our legislature for just and laws across the board.
That's awesome. Now, I know you answered the question about the mission, but did you have further questions about that?
Basically, that's you answered it, yeah. So to become a member, you have a website?
Of course,
Yeah.
yes. GOAL.org. GOAL.org.
Perfect.
Awesome.
And we make it very easy for people to join. And there's a lot of information on the website with regard to our Code of Massachusetts regulations, what's happening at our local clubs. Do you know that we have over 200 rod and gun clubs in Massachusetts?
Wow.
Isn't that
Really?
amazing?
That's awesome.
351 cities and towns.
Now, I just went to Rhode Island and did a nice meet and greet for the DC project on
Fantastic.
Saturday. They have 36 clubs in the whole state of Rhode Island.
They
Crazy.
they have a bit more commercial ranges than Massachusetts. And that has a lot to do with different laws and regulations and insurance requirements,
Right.
what have you. But Massachusetts, and think of all the open space
Yeah.
that's created. And many of our clubs keep that land open for even non-members
Yeah, that's
for
great.
passive recreation, the hunting, the hiking, the bird watching, the
Yep.
mountain biking,
I don't-
the ATVing. And I
Yeah.
know that you love the
Yeah.
ATVing.
Yep. And I don't think people realize, too, that how important hunting is
Oh,
because
the North American conservation
Yep.
model is so important.
Yep.
We look at, not to get onto the hunting subject, but we look at the species that are legally hunted, especially in Massachusetts, right? And they're the healthiest they've been. Remember, we didn't have turkeys back in the 70s, and Jimmy Cardoza
didn't know
from the
that.
Division of
That's-
Fisheries
yeah.
and Wildlife was hired to bring that back
That's
in.
awesome.
And now, no matter where you go, we see turkeys.
Right.
It's absolutely wonderful. I think
Right.
the division.
I
of
think
Fish
there's
and
a camp
Wildlife does
too
a
for
great
juniors,
job.
don't they?
We have the
Yeah.
Massachusetts Junior Conservation
Yeah.
Camp, which is a project of Gun Owners Action League, Division of Fisheries and Wildlife, Department of Conservation and Recreation, and environmental police officers. And every year we have about 120 boys and girls, 13 through 17, that go through
That's
that
awesome.
camp. You can
Yeah.
only go once, and they learn all about conservation,
I think that's
fishing.
so amazing.
I think Garrett Holcomb's son went
Yes.
on this last
Yeah.
one.
Absolutely
Oh,
he did.
so there's Mansfield Fish and Game has
They
a nice.
sponsor.
Yep, they
They sponsor a
sponsor the
number of
kids,
kids.
and the only requirement is they have to do a presentation when they get back.
Yes.
So him and the boy that he went with, I can't remember that boy's name.
Jeff
but-
Strider, related to Jeff Strider somehow.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh,
They did a
okay.
fantastic presentation.
Aw.
It
Excellent.
was funny, informative. I mean, it was so great. It was
That's
great.
awesome.
They had to build a structure out of whatever they could find. And at the end, they, the leader there took some water, ice cold, they said, and dumped it on top of it. But they had to be in it to see if it was waterproof.
Oh, so the cardboard regatta. Oh, absolutely. So
Yeah,
every year,
they got
I
soaked.
don't want to spoil it for next year's, but a few of us will climb up on the lifeguard tower with coolers of ice cold water.
Oh.
Everybody's down in front posing for their group picture, and we just, okay, 1, 2, 3, and then we dump the water
No,
on.
that's
But
funny.
you
That's
need to take
awesome.
that out of the presentation so future campers,
Yeah.
don't know.
Right.
Right.
Let the
It's a
cat out of the
surprise.
bag. Did.
Fun.
Great times. I went as a young man, 15, and if it wasn't for the junior conservation camp, I wouldn't be involved in our civil rights issues
Yeah.
now.
I asked my daughter, and she might be interested.
Love to have her. I'll be
Yeah.
her shotgun instructor.
Aw.
Yeah,
That'd be
23
awesome.
And
years of
she's
doing that.
awesome with
One of my
long guns.
favorite missions.
Yeah.
Absolutely love it.
That'd be
That's awesome.
My son just joined the Boy Scouts.
Great.
So they went on a camping excursion this summer. It was a week long, and they got to shoot the .22 rifles.
Fantastic.
And so he had a leg up on some of the kids because
Mm-hmm.
he'd been shooting for a while. And he said, Mom, you wouldn't believe some of these kids just don't understand that you have to point a gun in a safe direction. And I
Right.
said, honey, they weren't taught.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's all
That's
about
why-
As I like to
education.
say, and I've said it many times in front of you, shooting is not hard, but it's not innate. We're not
Right.
born with this skill.
Right.
It has to be developed. It has to be learned and practiced.
Right.
Right.
So that's what I love what you two are doing with the
Yeah.
chapters and bringing so many new people into our Second Amendment civil rights community and the shooting sports and some hunting sports.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
That's what it's all
Yeah,
about.
thank you. This is awesome. So since you've been with Goal, and from what I was told, you've been with Goal for about 30 years?
Not quite.
Not
Not quite.
quite.
I started with Goal in August of 1999.
Okay. What kind of changes have you seen since you started from now?
Well, we've seen a dramatic increase in the various missions. When I started with Goal, I was brought on to bring more youth shooting into the state. So we developed programs to help increase small bore riflery. So think of boys and girls shooting a .22 caliber rifle from the prone position, the seated position, the kneeling
awesome.
position, and the offhand, the standing position. And they would compete against other clubs, and we would have the state small bore team that would actually compete nationally at places like Camp Perry, Ohio for the civilian marksmanship program.
That's
so a lot of
awesome.
that, we did a lot of work in the early years with the environmental the Environmental Protection Agency and Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection with regard to lead on our ranges so that we could be stewards of our environment and be responsible with regard to our environment. So that led to increases in types of targets that we shoot at, the
right.
biodegradable clay targets, and reclaiming the lead and recycling the lead. So it's amazing that we, as the shooters and the hunters, right, the Second Amendment civil rights community, are stewards of the environment, and we're leading, we're educating people on how to reclaim all of these recyclable materials because it's
awesome.
the right thing to do.
Yeah,
Right?
that's
And
awesome.
we've seen membership, way back when in 1998, we had a drastic change in our gun laws where the previous administration literally did away with all of our licenses that were issued for life. Right? We call these the Firearms Identification Card. And we had 1.2 million licensed gun owners, and with the stroke of a signature, we went down to less than 200,000 licensed gun owners, and we had to start basically anew. We were required to take training courses. Some people may think that's a good thing, some people may think that's a good thing. Education is always great. Government mandated education, though, not always great. So we've worked the rolls up to about 600,000 licensed gun owners now in Massachusetts.
600,000, wow. That's awesome.
That's great.
Absolutely.
That's
And
great.
the programs, right? We started with the Women on Target program, a program developed by the National Rifle Association, and that's blossomed into Massachusetts. I know that the two of you have been responsible for implementing that program at several
Yeah,
clubs.
that was
and
awesome.
One of my favorites,
Yep.
absolutely, because
That was
you
so
bring people
successful.
in that don't have, they're ignorant with regard to who we are as gun owners and the reasons why we own guns.
Right.
And we have them for a full day, and we start with
Yeah.
3 hours in the classroom, just educating them as to why people own guns.
Yeah.
And the parts of guns and what they are, what they're not, what they can and cannot do, and then feed them a
Right.
great meal, and then they get to learn, right, through hands-on training, right, total participant involvement, we all remember that term, right, that shooting is not hard,
Right.
but it's not innate. They'll shoot rifle,
Right.
pistol, handgun, and come away. And many, we have groups of women that will come back year after year. So did you get your license to carry, your firearms identification card yet? Oh no, I just like to come and get my gun on with you once a year, like groupies. I think that's
Right.
wonderful, right?
Yep.
Because
And-
education is key.
We had probably like 90% of those women that day that you came were all domestic violence survivors. So that was
It makes for a
incredible.
more powerful event. And it's, I always, my prayer to all of our instructor candidates is may everybody in your class want to take your class because they went clay target shooting with a friend or a neighbor and said, this is great, I want to get my license so I can do this. But yet we have to understand there are some people that come to these events, all licensing classes, that they were referred because they were the victim of a violent crime, and the perpetrator is now out on bail, and their cousin, the police officer, their sister, the police officer, said, you need to get your gun license.
Right.
You need protection. And that's, you wish it wasn't that way,
Right.
but it is.
Yep.
Simply put, it
And that
is.
kind of goes into your next question really well.
Yeah,
too.
about 12 years ago or so, I took my very first firearm class, the home firearm safety class.
Yes.
From the Taunton Rifle and Pistol Club. The guys there did a really good job. And I was the only female there. So over the last decade or so, have you seen a shift in what the faces look like of your students?
Absolutely. In the basic classes, the basic licensing classes, we're seeing more women attend those classes. And on the instructor level classes, we're seeing not a huge increase. Your class, your instructor class, was a little bit different. We had how many women take that class?
Yeah, 6,
4 or
three,
5, I
5,
think.
6.
And you had recruited a good majority of those, if I
Yeah.
recall.
Yeah.
Like, that's the advocacy part of what we do.
Right.
In the classes that I've continued to teach, sometimes we'll have, if we have 10 instructor candidates per class, sometimes we'll have 1 or up to 3 or 4 women in that class. So it ebbs and flows, it
Yeah.
really does.
Do you know how many women instructors there are right now currently in Mass?
I don't.
No.
I don't. Not enough. How's that for an answer?
Never
For an
enough.
answer.
Never enough.
Yeah, so I think when you took the class, were you feeling intimidated at that
Oh,
point,
for sure.
being the only
for
female?
Sure.
You didn't
Yeah.
show it.
Right? So
Yeah.
that's
You
awesome.
fake it till you make it, John.
Exactly. Exactly.
So this is a fun question for you. What is your favorite class to teach and why?
Probably the Women on Target events. Right?
Oh.
I speak of them often because it's such a phenomenal event to introduce, right? Moms and
Yeah.
grandmoms and here's a funny story. Not to get off the
No.
topic, but it's relatable. We had a family come in to do a private licensing class, and Mom, they had to drag in, kicking and screaming. She did not want to attend the class. Nobody should own a gun. Literally, by the end of class, we have her shooting a piece of steel at 50 yards with a pistol. And she was a very religious woman. She sang in the church choir. And I would say, all right, Marge, you hit the target. What does that mean? She'd say, an angel just got its wings. And that's what it's all about. The fun, right? And the
Yeah.
camaraderie
Yeah.
of the shooting sports.
That's awesome.
And,
Yeah.
and the Women on Target events lead to a lot of those.
Yeah.
They dispel myths. right? They simply dispel myths, and that's what it's all about.
Wait.
But I love the instructor courses. Currently, my main mission of goal is I travel around the state and I provide the law seminars. I know we'll talk about those later on.
Yeah.
You know, we get to meet, 100 people in the room that have honest questions because our laws are so convoluted. And you meet wonderful people.
Yep,
in
like-minded people.
in this civil rights adventure.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
I
probably
like
a good
that,
word,
adventure.
that we're on.
We are on an adventure.
We'll put a picture up here. In this picture, it was Valentine's Day, and we had an Armed Women of America meeting
Yeah.
for the month
Valentine's
of February, and so we made targets, and
were all made
they were hearts and
yeah.
everything, and like John said, it's fun. It's
Yeah.
it's a fun time, and we have little competitions, we give little
Yep.
prizes, and the ladies love it. They
Yep.
love it.
We have like, I think our oldest lady is 75, 70?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Is she the one that came in with the
She
rifle?
was one of them.
With the rifle?
Oh yeah, but then there was another one with the
She's
sign.
not. She never wanted to shoot a handgun. It's the
Yep.
rifle. She's using this, or she's not shooting. And we're like, okay.
And it was an old gun that was passed down from her father, so
So it was fun.
it
So
was
she got to
it
shoot
was
it.
you know
It had that
meant
family connection.
Yes.
absolutely. It
Yes.
was awesome.
So my question to you, John, as a gun owner, it's our responsibility to know the laws in the state that we live in.
Yes.
Ignorance is not a defense.
Factually,
right?
it is. But it's very difficult. It's very difficult. I've been doing this for 23 years full time, and I'll get into, slight dissertations and friendly arguments with other knowledgeable folks, attorneys, law enforcement. And unfortunately, law enforcement doesn't get the training that they need to understand our laws. The firearms retailer, right? We seek their knowledge and their opinions out, and they don't have the legal citations. It's a constant battle to make sure that everybody, both law enforcement, those whose job is assigned to enforce our laws and our regulations, and as responsible gun owners, we want to be lawful, right? We may not agree with the statute or the regulation, but we understand. Listen, if we want to continue exercising our Second Amendment civil rights, we have to be law-abiding, so we try to search out that information. It's not fair. Massachusetts gun law and regulation is not fair to law enforcement. It's not fair to the responsible firearms owner. It's just, there's no common sense associated with that, where other states, I teach the Utah class, lived in Utah for 10 years, and if you think that licensing is important, and they no longer have licensing, by the way, they're a permitless carry state, I thought Utah was a great model for it,
Yeah.
because it applied common sense. Listen, as we like to say at Goal, we don't want bad people to have access to guns or other items that could be weapons, propane, rope, knives,
Right.
golf clubs, and things like
I
that.
like that.
But we fight every day so that good people, right, responsible people, have the choice as to whether or
Right.
not they own firearms, not only for protection, but for recreation, competition, collecting, personal protection, hunting, all of these valid reasons.
To have a firearm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the
So
picture
true.
that we're showing now is of John teaching a class, a law class, a Massachusetts gun law class for our Armed Women of America.
Yeah, last month.
Down in
It was awesome.
Mansfield last
Yeah,
month.
yeah.
Great questions, great people.
Yeah, the two questions about law that I feel that every person asks us is, how do I transport this in my car, and what do I have to do when I have guns at home?
Right.
Do I
Okay.
lock them up? Do I have to lock them up? Can they be loaded? So I think of the book this big of all the Massachusetts gun laws, those two questions I feel impact all of us on a daily basis.
Certainly. So
think.
transport and storage.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk about transport first, or you want to talk about storage first?
Storage.
Okay, storage. Chapter 140, Section 131L, capital L. And it starts with paragraph A and goes all the way to paragraph F. Paragraph A tells us what we have to do with all of our guns when they're not under the direct control of the owner or authorized user. And they have to be stored or kept as to prohibit unauthorized access by an unauthorized individual. Unauthorized individual is somebody that doesn't have an LTC, license to carry firearms, or an FID card, all depending on what the gun is. And the remaining paragraphs are all the punishment clauses. I mean, literally, if you fail to secure a handgun where there's a minor in the home that doesn't have an FID card, and they could gain access to it, and you're charged and convicted, the ultimate punishment can be up to 12 years in state prison for that. There need
crazy.
not be any catastrophic event. I mean, we certainly hope and pray there never is. But let's face it, for years, for hundreds of years, responsible people have been securing their firearms, whether required by law or not, from unauthorized users. So back to the question, when the gun is not under the direct control of an authorized user, it has to be stored or kept as to prohibit unauthorized access. We can use, Massachusetts State Police actually has a roster of approved locking devices that are for dealers. As a dealer, if they transfer a handgun or semi-automatic rifle, they have to include an improved locking device with that. And industry has been doing that, including that for years, way before it was required by any state law. So if you come home from a night on the town and you have your personal protection handgun with you, you take that off. You don't have to unload it. You need to secure it in a safe, instant access locking device. You could unload it at that point, unload the gun and put a trigger lock on it, or a cable lock, something like that.
Now, that's not considered a safe storage, though, that lock, right? 'Cause we've
100% it is. Right, so the state says, again, it has to be locked with something or in something, and here are our choices.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
So
So-
cable lock not locked in something else is perfectly fine.
Correct,
Cable
Okay.
lock in a drawer, perfectly fine.
correct,
Okay. Yeah,
absolutely.
we've been
Or
asked
with
that
a trigger
too.
lock.
Or with a trigger
Or
lock.
with a trigger lock. Right,
We've-
so
we've
the
been
way
asked
that I
that
store
a
my
lot.
firearms, I have my instant access locking safe, so when I come home from work, I'll take my personal protection firearm off me, and I'll put that loaded firearm in the instant access safe, where the items that I used down in South Carolina earlier this week, those are unloaded and in a big safe, because those guns aren't used for personal protection in the home.
You don't
Right.
think a boar might run through your house?
I pray that will happen every day. Every day.
That's funny. That's funny.
So storage ultimately is pretty easy. If the gun is under your direct control, it doesn't have to be secured. If it's not under your direct control, then it has to be secured. And this is in a home or a dwelling.
Right.
Transport is much different. And by the way, with our storage laws, paragraph F is an exemption to our muzzle-loading type guns. So we may have an antique rifle that uses commercially available ammunition that was manufactured in 1872. That rifle has to be secured like a brand new pump-action shotgun today. But if you have a muzzle-loading gun, even our inlines that are so popular for deer hunting here in Massachusetts, that doesn't have to be secured by statute. But naturally, I'm going to secure all my stuff, whether it's required by
Right.
law or not, because it's the responsible thing to
Right,
do.
exactly. Responsible.
And industry makes it really easy if you choose to keep a firearm, a rifle, pistol, or shotgun in the home for one's personal protection. There are plenty of devices that give you next to instant access that certainly meet the requirements of Chapter 140, Section 131L.
The other question we've been asked a couple times, like, well, if I'm sleeping, I can put it in the drawer next to me.
There are some that say you can, there are some that say you can't. Goal has certainly said, no, that's not under your direct control.
Right, that's
More
how I feel.
importantly, your moral and ethical responsibilities. There are great products on the market that allow instant access.
Yep.
Put it in there. Peace
Right.
of mind, and you're certainly meeting
Agreed.
the ethical responsibility.
A lot to it.
Absolutely.
Lot to it.
Absolutely.
So what was the other?
Transport.
Yes,
All right, so
transport.
transport's under Chapter 140, Section 131, capital C. I remember it, C for car, right? And it breaks down, it tells us or directs us what we have to do when the item we're transporting is a firearm, a handgun under Massachusetts law, this section of law. And it differs from if it's what's known as a large capacity rifle or a large capacity shotgun. Remember, in America, they just call them rifles and shotguns. In Massachusetts, we have a legal definition, large capacity. So if it's a handgun and it's under your direct control, it can be loaded or unloaded. And we've always suggested if you're carrying a firearm, a handgun for your personal protection, it should be attached to a quality holster attached to your body, right? That's not the requirement set forth in law, that's just sage advice. So if it's a handgun and it's loaded, it has to be under your direct control. If it's not under your direct control, it has to be unloaded. Nowhere in our transport statute is that gun required to be locked in something for purposes of transport. The old laws, that was a requirement on what we had known as a Class B license. We no longer have Class B licenses. So once again, if it's a handgun and it's under your direct control, it can be loaded or unloaded. If it's not under your direct control, it has to be unloaded. If you want to transport that gun unloaded and locked in something because you're not using it for protection, absolutely, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. And then when we talk about large capacity rifles and shotguns, by statute, very easy to understand, unloaded in a locked case, locked trunk, or other secure container. And we've always recommended get a secure case, a case manufactured, advertised, and sold as a storage device for rifles and shotguns.
Right.
Right? As far as the trunks, people will disagree with me, and I'm not an attorney. I'm not an attorney. Your locked trunk of today is not the locked trunk of my first car, 1974 Plymouth Fury, right? We had one way to get into that trunk, and it was like a vault in itself.
Right.
Our modern sedans, we have key fob. We can press that button and open the trunk from across the Walmart parking lot.
Now
We
you
can
got
fold
your
down the
apps on
back
your
seat.
phone and everything else.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So I think that the best advice, our adjunct attorney Lisa Steele, has always coined the frame, use a product manufactured, advertised, and sold as a device to store and transport guns.
There's a lot to this
Oh,
law.
there is. And then finally, what's remaining? Rifles and shotguns that are not large capacity, and there's no guidance in our transport laws. So we actually look at hunting law in Chapter 131. I have it written down here, 131, Section 63. That's hunting law. And hunting law states that you cannot have a loaded rifle or shotgun in or on a motor vehicle unless it's on land that you own or occupy.
We're working on that, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Absolutely. So, and that's just Massachusetts.
Right.
We have other federal requirements when we're driving through states that don't honor your license in Massachusetts. We call that the Volcker-McClure Act out of FOPA, Firearm Owners Protection Act. So for instance, when Kevin and I were driving from Massachusetts to South Carolina to be compliant with states like New York and New Jersey and the District of Columbia and what have you, all of the guns were unloaded and locked in containers as far back in the passenger compartment as the vehicle as possible, and the ammunition was in a separate locked container.
Right. Laws, there's a lot to it.
Absolutely.
And it's, in my opinion, it's your responsibility to make sure you keep up on those laws because they could change, right?
And 100%. They don't, people say, oh, the gun laws are changing all the time. That's subjective at best, but we have, what, a 2-year legislative session here, and then the regulatory process, we have public hearings and all. But interpretations and opinions change more so than the gun laws.
Right.
But that is the beauty of being a member of GOAL.
Right.
That's what we do. We provide information. Information for the GOAL member, information for people that aren't GOAL members that own firearms, in the general term, firearms, rifle, pistol, shotgun, and information for the person that's researching, I'm considering getting a gun for clay target shooting or hunting. Where can I go to figure out the process? So GOAL's priorities, my priorities have always been, we support the GOAL member first because we are a member-supported organization, followed by people that are trying to learn about their Second Amendment civil rights and gun laws in Massachusetts. They want to go through the licensing process. And then finally, people that have a gun license but aren't members of GOAL.
Thank you so much, John, for being our first guest on our first episode officially. This is awesome. Thank you.
My pleasure.
So we're out of time, but we want to thank you for tuning in to Sisters in Arms.
We hope you join us again for our next episode, our third episode.
Yeah.
Have a great day and
stay safe.